A few years ago, I found something in my own behavior that made me a bit uncomfortable. And it was that from the moment I woke up to the end of the day, my life was a series of screens. So I began the day with my phone, which is what woke me up in the morning. So I sat there in bed, scrolling through various videos on Instagram and a bunch of different applications. But then it was time to get out of bed and cook breakfast. And so the thing I focused then on, in addition to the omelet in the pan, was the iPad that was right next to the oven. But then it was time to do some work, so I went to a different screen, which was attached to another screen itself, aka my laptop. And all the while, this little devil on my wrist was tapping and beeping and booping and distracting me as I was trying to get important stuff done. As we live in a society filled with fast-paced media, our brains get so accustomed to being served with entertainment 24/7. This can be good for our brains to be trained to take in a lot of information, but it all the while makes our minds overstimulated and less creative. As Chris Bailey explains in his TED Talk, How to Get Your Brain to Focus, he explores the results from his detox from social media and how it is better for our brains to be less stimulated. Chris Bailey, How to Get Your Brain to Focus. But there was one particular offender out of all these different devices that I wasted more time on than anything else, and that was my phone. I could spend hours on it every single day. And so I decided, as an experiment, to get rid of it for a month, which meant I was going to live on it for just 30 minutes every single day at a maximum. And so that was the amount of time I had for maps, or just call my mother. It was the amount of time I had for everything I could possibly want to do. So it took about a week to adjust to a new lower level of stimulation, but once I did, I noticed that three things began to happen. The first is that my attention span grew. It was like I could focus on things, not effortlessly, but with much more ease than I could before this even started. Second is that when my mind wandered a bit, I had more ideas that I arrived at. And the third is that I had more thoughts and plans about the future. So beginning with the attention spans we have, this is how we pay attention to the world around us and how much control we have over our focus. The research in this particular area is fascinating. It turns out that when we work in front of our computers, especially when our phone is nearby, we focus on one thing for just 30 seconds before switching to doing something else. And when we have things like Slack open as we're doing work, this lowers to 35 seconds. But the reason this is the case is not what we think. We think the issue is that our brains are distracted. But after looking at the research, this is what I've come to know as a symptom for the problem that runs more deeply. It's not that we're distracted, it's that our brains are overstimulated. It's that we crave distraction in the first place. Our brains love these tiny nuggets of information that we get off of social media, emails, and all the other things during the course of the day. There's even a mechanism in our minds called the novelty bias, by which our brain rewards us with a hit of dopamine, one of those wonderful pleasure chemicals that we feel when we eat a whole pizza or check Facebook. We have this dopamine coursing through our minds, so we not only crave distraction, but our mind rewards us for it. So that's the state of our minds today. We're at this hyper-stimulated state where we bounce around between a bunch of different objects of attention that are very stimulating for our mind. So I thought, okay, if the phone had these effects on my attention span, what if I lowered how stimulated I was even more? And I began to realize that when we go from a state of high stimulation to low stimulation, that feeling has a name. And it's called boredom, aka the restlessness we feel every time we have a super busy week. We find ourselves sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon thinking, what am I doing? And so I asked the readers on my website, what is the most boring thing you can think of doing? Because I'm going to make myself bored for an hour each day this month. And so I did some stuff that I'm still quite upset about to this day. Like on day 1, I read the entire iTunes terms and conditions for 1 hour. It's actually shorter and more readable than you might think. On day 4, I waited on hold with Air Canada's baggage claim department. That's bad enough. On day 17, I counted all the zeros I could in the first 10,000 digits of pi. And on day 24, I watched the clock go tick, tick, and tick for 1 hour. and I did 27 other activities that month. But as boring as that may sound, which it is, I noticed the exact same effects as I did during the smartphone experiment. Results like arriving at more ideas and a greater attention span. It was like I could focus on things even more effortlessly. Not because I was surrounded by fewer distractions per se, but because my mind didn't crave distraction in the first place. There's a great quote that I love from J.R.R. Tolkien, where he says that not all those who wander are lost. And the exact same thing is true with regard to our attention and focus. Now, I want you to think back on when your most brilliant idea struck you. You most likely weren't even focused on something. Maybe this morning, you were taking a shower, and your mind finally had a chance to connect the seven different constellations that were swirling around in your mind to create an idea that your phone could have never come up for you. I call this mode scatter focus, and the research shows that when we just make our attention rest, it goes to 3 places. We think about the past, the present, and the future. But we think about the past much less than we might think. Only about 12% of the time we're recalling ideas and events in these mind-wandering episodes. But the present, which is a much more productive place to wander, we think about 28% of the time. But here's the thing, whenever our mind is wandering, we think about the future 48% of the time. This is why when we're taking a shower in the morning, we tend to plan out our entire day, even though it hasn't even started yet. And this is called our mind's perspective bias. But all that aside, I want you to find whatever it is for you that lets your mind wander. Something that's simple, it doesn't consume your full attention. Could be as simple as waiting in line somewhere and simply making your mind relax. Could be getting a massage or taking that extra long shower. Or maybe upgrading that shower to a bath so you soak not only with your body, but with your ideas as well. Currently we have this mentality that we need to fit more in. There's all this talk about hustling, which sounds so unappealing to me. Like, I'm an anti-hustler. I'm one of the laziest people you'll ever meet. But I think that's what gives me so many ideas to talk and write about. So with that being said, we don't need to fit more in. We're doing enough. We're doing too much. We're doing so much that our mind never wanders anymore. And it's sad because that's when our best ideas and plans come to us. Likewise, when we think of traffic moving on a highway, you might think it's the speed of the cars that help the traffic keep going, but no, it's not the speed. It's the space in between each vehicle that help keep the traffic flowing smoothly. And our work and our lives are the same way. We need to space out our workload, because if we don't, our minds will become cluttered and unfocused, like a traffic jam. So to summarize, we like to think of distraction as the enemy of our focus, but it's not. It's a symptom of why we find it hard to focus, which is the fact that our minds are overstimulated. So I want to end with a 2-week challenge for you to make your mind a bit less stimulated. Simply see what happens to your attention. Like, how many ideas do you get? How does your focus change? And how many plans do you make? So for 2 weeks, do 2 things. The first is utilize all the great features on phones and devices that help us eliminate a lot of the time that we waste on them. Using those features helps us become aware of our screen time, but also helps us generate more ideas. The second is to rediscover boredom for yourself. You don't have to do it for a month like I did, but rediscover boredom just for a few minutes each day. Go lay on the couch and find wherever your mind goes and scatter your attention. I think you'll find some remarkably fruitful things that come from that. So if there's one thing I have learned after doing this deep dive into the world on how we focus, is that the state of our attention is what determines the state of our lives. If we're distracted in each moment, those moments of distraction and overstimulation build up to create a life that feels more unfocused, like we don't have a clear direction. But when we make our minds less stimulated, when we make our minds more calm, we get the benefits of that productivity, ideas, focus, and creativity, but we also live a better life because of it.